Hello, good morning. Welcome to this event, Governor Talks, the case of Costa Rica. I'm Rodrigo Valdez, the director of the Western Hemisphere Department, and I have the pleasure today to have this conversation with the governor of the Central Bank of Costa Rica, Roger Madrigal. Let me introduce Roger very quickly. Perhaps the best way is to say that he's an old person in the central bank community. We met probably 30 years ago for the first time in this community of central banks. So a very experimented person about central banking, did his career in the central bank and became the governor a few years ago. What we would like to discuss today with the governor is basically two broad topics. One is monetary policy, macroeconomic stability in Costa Rica, how they have implemented inflation targeting, their floating regime, etc. And the second topic has to do with the development and now functioning of a safe, centralized digital payment system called SINPE in Costa Rica, which basically today is used by 90% of the population. So with that introduction, we will have this discussion. I don't know if you would like to have a few words at the beginning, or you prefer we go straight to questions.
Just data. On December, I will be 40 years that I started working at the central bank.
Wow. Yeah. That's it. So, yeah, that's amazing as a civil servant for a country. So, look, let's go to our questions and to monetary policy. The performance of Costa Rica has been very impressive in the last few years, partly due to the implementation of a homegrown program supported by an EFF and RSF arrangement from the fund. Currently, inflation is very low. There's a few countries where the last mile was short and they went really below target for a while. And also, you have been very active in the implementation of the program in the past. So, can you tell us about the implementation of monetary policy throughout this period? How was the learning of inflation targeting throughout the last couple of decades, and how you manage at the end monetary policy?
Yeah, the adoption of inflation targeting is a long process. We start with some public announcement that we will change the regime in 2004, and we start doing that effectively in 2006 when we got rid of the crowding peg regime. It was in 2006, so right now we have sort of 18 years of some kind of variability or flexibility in the exchange rate. So this is one thing that we did, a process that little by little, and January 18, the country officially said we have a full-fledged inflation targeting. We have some challenge after the pandemic with all the shocks and how to manage these compound shocks. Well, we did traditional monetary policy. We used the interest rate as the instrument. It was nothing special. It's just to do what the design of the framework, the policy framework, have to do.
No, perfect. So let me ask a bit about the program now with the fund and the implementation of this first ever RSF. Actually, Costa Rica was the first in signing an RSF with the fund, and actually it finished. So it's the first RSF also to be completed. So could you please elaborate on which reforms measures have been implemented by the central bank around this, and how you see this foundational work for the institution going forward?
We have two programs at the same time. One is the traditional one, and the second one was the RSF. This one has to do with climate change. So we started incorporate in the design of the monetary policy and fiscal policy some issues related to climate change. Also, we have to with the collaboration of the superintendencies, we try to create a big database, and you can link a specific risk with a specific part of the country geographically to know what is the risk for example, floods or some climate issues to a specific part of the financial system. It's something that we did. Also, the greening of the international reserves. There is a report that we made every year that we say how green are the international reserves. It's something that we are doing, and we are planning to continue on that. Okay.
Going back to the program now, let me ask you about what was the most difficult challenge that you faced throughout. What was a tense moment?
Yeah, this is something that maybe is very unique to the case of Costa Rica. We asked for some data to the superintendency, and it was a big problem in the country. They didn't want to give us the data. It's kind of funny because the data are already in the central bank, in the computers and the servers of the central bank, but we have to have the permit to use this data in order to do to measure climate risk, to do stress tests, etc. And they took us to the Constitutional Court. Right now, we are expecting the final decision of the Constitutional Court, and it's very challenging because this is a big risk for the central bank that if they say that we cannot use this data and other data, it will be a disaster for the statistical purpose in Costa Rica for the making the statistics. You see, in the other direction that the world is going, we as a part of the OECD is something that we have to improve how we do our statistics. We were doing fine until we have this problem with the superintendents.
Let me turn to your centralized digital payment system. It was patiently developed over the years. Can you please share with us how the central bank built and developed this system when you started? Which dimensions of efficiency gains you see in the private sector and the public sector?
Okay. It's called SIMPE, the Spanish acronym for Sistema Nacional de Pagos Electrónicos. SIMPE with N, SINPE. It started in the late 90s. The idea was to have a clearing system for the checks, for the checks on all the commercial banks. The person that built that was an engineer in computation, and his idea was to have something we call modular. You have this idea of what is a Lego, that you can build things just adding up. So the first thing, in 96, 97, something like that, was to have this clearing system. After that, he realized that it was very easy to add another services, for example, real-time transfers, moving money from banks, from the government agencies to the banks, etc. And it grew up. It has a lot of services right now, more than 30 services at this point. So it was a kind of organic thing that led by the needs of the central bank. All the monetary policy and the implementation of the open market operations, things like that, are done by SIMPE. So, as I said, it started something very small, and now is used for all the country. It has one of the services, one we call SIMPE Mobile. It's the capability to put money among people using the phone. In some cases, even SMS messages, very easy to use, and to the reach of any person of the country. Actually, you said it already, 90% of the population 15 years and older has an account in a bank or a financial institution, and they are able to send and to get money using this SIMPE.
Let me ask you about what others could learn from your process. I understand that this is centralized in the central bank at the end. And if a country comes and say, "Look, we're starting," would you prefer this to be allocated in the private sector, more free competition, or more guidance from the authority?
Before that, you asked me for efficiency gains. Yeah, of course. In terms of time and money, when we started this, it took like 5 days, 10 days sometimes to clear a check. Right now, it's a regulation that is used in no more than 2 hours, something like that. So it's faster and cheaper. Going in retrospective, you ask me an advice how to do. What are your objectives? What are your goals? What do you want to do? Is one consideration, and also some strategic decisions. For example, you want centralized or not. It depends on the structure of the economy. It depends on the industrial organization of the country, and it's one something that we have to pay attention. Let me say in very easy terms, what we call the source code. For example, the bank has to be the owner of that. Could be the case that you say you want to give this to the private sector, but also there are considerations. For example, that you want to make a change, it will be very expensive or will take too much time, because we have that in Costa Rica. It wasn't all these systems was in the hands of the private sector. So we want something very easy to change a screen or a report. Well, it will cost that amount of money and will take the time. In some cases, no, we will not do that. In order to conduct the monetary policy or the foreign exchange market, as in the case of Costa Rica, we cannot depend on what other wants to us. Other thing is, we develop some services that is on a voluntary basis. It's not that we impose this to the banks. This is the service. It's up to you if you take it or not.
Perfect. Let me circle back to monetary policy and ask you about how the transmission and the operation of monetary policy has changed with your
okay.
system.
There are some layers of this. First of all, it helps to add people to the financial system, to make them more formal, to formalize the economy. So you have people that for financial inclusion, so more transactions will go to the market, more going to the market, more going to the financial system. So the role of the monetary policy will be better because you are using the markets. So it's a kind of transmission mechanism from more formality to more power of the monetary policy, but it's a process.
Perfect. Thank you. I have one more question for the governor, then we will open up for questions from the floor. And that question has to do with your recommendations for our work from the fund perspective. You have a lot of experience dealing with the fund in different positions, the central bank. What we should be attentive of, what should change in the way we deal with countries?
Well, particularly, I don't have any complaint, but I just can say things that helps a lot. For example, the residency, to have people from the IMF on the ground, it helps a lot. In the particular case of Costa Rica and this administration, that is let me say, a weak government, because we have very few legislators in the Congress. So there is a lot of there is not enough trust between the executive branch and the legislative branch. Sometimes for the dialogue is a lot of help to have people from the IMF, because they are like a trusted advisor. So they try to, or they will give us credibility to us in their opinion. So I don't know if I am in a position to give you an advice, but I said something that worked very well was these people from in the ground from the IMF and this constant communication with legislators or other parts of the executive branch.
Yeah, perfect. Anything else that we should improve?
No.
No, that's right. That's right. The complaints are private. Yeah. So thank you, Governor. Let me open up for questions from the floor, if there are any. Don't be shy. Please, if you can introduce yourself. But for the rest, yeah, it's coming. The mic is coming.
Yeah, hi. I'm Robert Blum. I'm an economist. I know we know each other a little bit. I wanted to ask you just if you can, or if it's useful to comment on El Salvador and their use of Bitcoin and so on, and their overall sort of payment arrangement. And of course, you have the Central American Common Market, so I presume the central banks are coordinating to some extent. So I don't know whether their system operations have affected your your own design, or whether they've tried to learn from you, or whether there's been any helpful interaction one way or the other, or and so on. So whether you could comment on it.
Let me add a couple of other questions, and we bundle. Any more? Please, yeah, if you can introduce yourself.
Jorge Campos, MUFG Bank. If you could speak to the financial inclusion element of developing your platform, getting different parts of society included and incorporated. We've seen a lot of different experiences in Latin America, from Brazil to Mexico, which have contrasting approaches.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can speak to how that's worked and those steps that you took prior to achieving the kind of success that you have locally.
Okay.
Any other? So let's back to the governor. Let me say first that feel free to address the Bitcoin part as you wish.
Okay.
It's a very specific and complex issue in the program negotiations with El Salvador. So yeah, you have feel free. Let me add to the point of inclusion of your system. Another question that has to do with cross-border flows and these new systems. How you see that, whether this should be easy to plug one to the other or not, etc.
Okay. The Bitcoin question is very easy because I'm not going to talk about that. It was it's a decision of El Salvador. It has a very complex decision. It's to make a legal tender this crypto asset, and it has a lot of complexities. So, for respect to them, I will not talk to that. About the common market of Central America, being an old guy, I can talk about that. It collapses. It's not working anymore. Costa Rica has a strategy to integrate commercially and financially to the international markets. It was an old institution of the 60s, something like that. With all the civil wars and things like that, it collapses. Nobody is using it's called Mercado Común Centroamericano, the Central American Common Market, but it's not working anymore. But we have it was substituted somehow for the free trade agreement with the United States. All the Central American countries are part of this agreement. So it's the way we do international trade with them. I have no specific recommendation for El Salvador. This is a country that is dollarized, so they don't have, let's say, their own monetary policy. So I'm going to talk to that. I can talk a little bit more about financial inclusion. Yeah. Something that the central bank did was the promoted so-called the simplified account. It's in Spanish is la cuenta de expediente simplificado. I don't know if I can, have to translate that to something like the simplified file of account. It's something to make very easy people to have a formal account in any financial institution. One characteristic of Costa Rica that is not well known, Costa Rica is a very small country, a small open economy. It has a lot of migration, a lot of migration. So the population is 5.2. It was in the 80s when we were a population of about 3 million. It says that maybe 600, 700,000 people were from Nicaragua. So migration is a big issue. And usually the migrants are excluded from financial services. So Costa Rica tried to do this very easy. This simplified account, maybe with just identity document, could be a passport, can be the original document from the country, or other forms to they register in Costa Rica, and they can open an account. So it's the way that we try to do this financial inclusion. Going back on one of your questions, having a lot of discussion about the payment system, what is the objective? Some cases the people talk about crypto assets or CDBCs, something like that, but what is the goal of that? In the case of Costa Rica, it's not my idea, I have to say. It's something that the previous governor says very clearly. Well, if you want something that to be efficient, secure, inclusive, well, you can do with having a very efficient payment system. That is Costa Rica is doing. So one of the goals is to be efficient, to be safe, for the interoperable, to be regulated. In the case that regulation not in the way to be, let's say, to forbid things, but just to coordinate things. The central bank is the regulator, but is more than a regulator. Is the coordinator of the. There are many details that you have to take into account. For example, the size of the numbers accounts. So it's something you cannot leave to the private sector sometimes to do, because they will do everyone by themselves. So you have to have a coordinator, in this case the central bank. So it has been a strategy for financial inclusion with this simplified account, and this is one of the ways that why Costa Rica has right now a 90% from that perspective financial inclusion. Maybe financial inclusion is a little bit more complex than just having an account, but for that metric we have 90% of the population of 50 years and older. I don't know if that I answered your question with that.
And more about cross-border?
Cross-border cross-border payments is a pain. It's something that we are dealing with that. We have not solved that. There are many things related with the interoperability that we are not there here. In some Central American countries, that maybe is very important, cross-border payments, because the migrants for remittance. Costa Rica is a country that has a very low amount of remittance, so there's no an urgency for that point of view, but maybe for finance, for international trade, yeah, it's something that we are working on that, but we are not yet there.
Perfect. Thank you, Governor. Another round of questions on the back, please. If you can introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Z from Middlebury Institute. I'm currently studying entrepreneurship. My question would be, the digital payment system in Costa Rica has reportedly serves over 90% of adults in the country. So what strategies were most effective in achieving this high adoption rate, and how do you plan to reach the remaining unbanked population? Thank you.
Okay.
Let me just add one more if there is. So we... Any other? Okay, Governor, please.
Can I go now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It's not 90% of the adult population. It's 90% of the people 15 years and older. Yeah. Even the teenagers. Even. Okay. As I said before, there are very features. One is interoperable. Other, these make easy to people to register to have an account in the financial system. As I said before, with this simplified account, for example, if you want to open an account in the United States, it's very hard. It's very difficult. Maybe in some cases, if you're a foreigner, it could be even impossible to open a checking account. Well, we make that easy or easier in Costa Rica. You have to have a valid identification. If you don't have a valid identification, it was a process in which you can register in the country and to have an identity. And with that identity, you can open an account. Of course, there are some limits of, for example, it's supposed to be for a small amount of money, things like that. Okay, but we make easier people to get formal in the financial system. Also, it's very cheap. You can send money and receive money, basically free, up to $200 per day. Right now, I think we are increasing that to $400 per day. It's not for all the transactions. It's supposed to be for people of low income with a few transactions. So, of course, if you want to do more than that, you can, in thousands of dollars per day, you can do it, but you have to pay a fee. So easier to register, easier to have the account, free for small amounts, for population 15 years and older.
Thank you, Governor. With this, there's one more there. You should have said it before. Please introduce yourself. Last question.
I have a question. There's been so much talk about interlinking fast payments, and you have talked about some of the challenges with respect to cross-border payments. Now, one question I have, do you see a business case for interlinking fast payment system? Is there enough trade within the region that would justify the countries interlinking their systems together?
Okay. First of all, there is enough trade. As not usual, it's not just among the region. We are a small country in Central America, but usually most trade is, in our case, not in the region, but in the rest of the world. For example, around 45–47% of our trade in Costa Rica is with the United States, but we have trade with Europe, with Africa, of course, with other countries in the region, in Latin America. Yeah, there is a case to improve the cross-border payments. Right now it's kind of expensive, takes time. We use to send money to another country. Right now is taking about 24 hours, something like that. We think that it can reduce that. There are some regional banks. In the case, the people have make a deposit in Costa Rica, and somebody, a relative in another bank in Nicaragua or in Guatemala, using a card can take the money from the ATM. But this is a solution that the private sector has made. We want to do this more efficient.
Thank you, Governor. Please thank the Governor with an applause.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll take that mic off you, so it's not.